When you see through a narcissist, you activate the most dangerous stage of the relationship. This is not when they apologize. It's not when they stop. It's when they launch a counterattack with every weapon in their arsenal. Gaslighting, emotional manipulation, blame shifting, punishment, and eventually smearing and disappearing without a trace. They don't accept the truth, they erase it. And you need to understand this clearly. A narcissist never backs down quietly. When you stop engaging, they push harder. When you gain clarity, they'll twist your mind until you doubt yourself. And when you walk away, they'll try to make you feel guilty, as if you've abandoned someone who's wounded and helpless. Every move they make is calculated. A narcissist doesn't need love, they need power. And the moment you stop reacting, which means you've just cut off the supply they feed on, they'll go to great lengths to regain control. This isn't about scaring you. This is a warning, because if you don't see what's coming, you'll fall for the trap again, and next time it will be deeper, more dangerous, and far more manipulative. They'll call you crazy. They'll accuse you of being the narcissist. They'll project their sins onto you, rewriting the story so that you carry their guilt. They'll cry. They'll tell heartbreaking stories from their childhood. They'll text you in the middle of the night with promises that they've changed, that this time will be different. And when none of it works, they'll disappear, as if you never existed. Worse still, they'll parade a new partner in front of you just days later, publicly, hastily, and with obvious intent, to make you question your worth and believe you were the problem all along. But make no mistake, none of this is coincidence. It's all part of a strategy. Every action is deliberate. Nothing is random. This video isn't for the faint of heart. It's for you, the one who has seen the truth but still doesn't know exactly what lies ahead. I'm going to walk you through the 7 things a narcissist will do right after realizing you've figured them out. No fluff, no assumptions, just the raw, unfiltered truth, because kindness won't protect you from a manipulator. You need awareness, you need boundaries, and most of all, you need ruthless clarity. So, if you're ready to break free for good and never get pulled back in again, make sure you watch this video to the very end. No one walks into a relationship thinking they're going to become the victim of emotional abuse. You come in with trust, with hope, with an open heart, and that is exactly what makes you the perfect target. A narcissist doesn't go after the cold and detached. They go after the compassionate, the ones who always try to understand, the ones who are quick to forgive, and most dangerously, the ones willing to carry the emotional weight for others. In the beginning, everything feels too perfect. They listen to you, make you feel special, pay attention to the smallest details, and accelerate emotional bonding with future promises. You think you've found your soulmate, but the truth is, you've just stepped into the first phase of the narcissistic manipulation cycle, the idealization phase, and soon after, the cracks begin to show. You start to feel confused. How can someone be so sweet one moment and so terrifyingly cold the next? Why do they only seem to care when you're about to leave? Why do you always end up apologizing, always have to be the one to fix things, always feel like you're the one doing more to keep the connection alive? And most importantly, why can't you recognize yourself anymore when you look in the mirror? This is the moment you begin piecing things together. You go back and reread the messages. You remember how they reacted when you were hurting. You start seeing patterns, not random behavior, but a system. You realize they've never truly taken responsibility. What you once labeled as a bad temper, past trauma, or work stress, you now see for what it really is, an emotional manipulation strategy cloaked in vulnerability. The awakening doesn't usually come from one dramatic event. It comes from a small moment, a cold comment that makes you cry, a look of contempt when you're most vulnerable, or complete indifference when you need them the most. In that moment, it's not just pain you feel, it's the realization that you've been in pain for too long, and that no one, not even you, has been there to protect yourself. From that second on, there's no going back. Once you've seen the truth, you can't unsee it. Once you know, you can't pretend to be naive. And that's when you enter a state of awakening, where you begin to view the entire relationship not as a series of emotional highs and lows, but as a manipulative system designed to keep you confused and dependent. But this awakening doesn't come with immediate power, it comes with an internal storm. You start getting angry at yourself for not seeing it sooner. You feel ashamed for letting someone treat you that way. You feel empty, realizing you may have never truly been loved. And most terrifying of all, you begin to doubt everything: your memories, your self-worth, your ability to trust your own judgment. And yet, this is the sign that healing has begun, because only when you start questioning everything can you begin rebuilding, this time on truth, not illusion. You start reading, learning, listening to others who have walked this same path, and piece by piece you reconstruct your story, not sugar-coated, not based on assumptions, and no longer filled with self-blame. You face the raw reality, and though it hurts, you choose to accept it, because that's the only way forward. Putting the pieces together isn't just about seeing who they really were, it's about understanding who you became in that relationship and why you deserve so much more. So even though this phase may feel chaotic, know this: you are moving in the right direction. You're not crazy, you're not weak, you're not too sensitive. You are the first one in the entire relationship to face the truth, and that makes you 100 times stronger than the one who tried to break you. You no longer try to explain away their cruelty. You no longer use their painful past to justify their lack of empathy. You begin to realize narcissists aren't unconsciously hurting others because they're wounded. They know exactly what they're doing. They don't manipulate because they've lost control. They manipulate because they need control. Your emotions are their tools. Your kindness is a weapon they turn against you. And what they fear most isn't losing you, it's losing the power to emotionally control you day after day. This is when the truth starts to settle not just in your mind, but in your body. Every sigh, every sleepless night, every spike of anxiety when a message arrives. You realize you've been living in a prolonged state of low-grade tension, like you've had to stay on guard even inside the very relationship that was supposed to be your safe space. And once you become aware of that, you can't pretend anymore. You can't go back to living half a life. The process of putting the pieces together also leads you to a deeper question. Who am I without this relationship? You've been shaped for so long to be the explainer, the peacekeeper, the one holding it all together. Your identity has been built around keeping them calm, saying the right things so they don't shut down, sacrificing just enough to make them stay, and then it hits you. You've never actually been allowed to be your full, authentic self. Awakening is when you stop performing. You begin cutting off codependent relationships. You stop apologizing for how you truly feel. You walk away from being the nice one, if that means becoming the submissive one. You begin to understand. Peace doesn't come from others finally stopping the harm. It comes from you no longer allowing it. But here's the truth. You will feel lonely, at least in the beginning. Not everyone will get it. Some will think you're overreacting. Some will say, but they never hit you, did they? Others might ask why you didn't just try harder. Those words will sting. But you'll learn this. Awareness always comes before validation. You don't need the world to understand you. You just need to stand with yourself. And in that silence, where there's no one left to blame, no more roles to hide behind, you begin to rebuild from scratch. No more illusions, no more masks, just you. Raw, wounded, real, and full of potential to rise again. When you finally piece things together, when you can name the wound, draw the line between love and control, you no longer live in the grey. You stop asking, do they love me, and start asking, if love makes me lose myself, is it still love? You no longer say, but I still care, and instead say, but I won't lose my peace to keep this going. You stop waiting for them to change. You begin choosing to change yourself. This is the moment when you stop fearing loneliness more than control, and that is freedom. The hardest part of this journey isn't realizing who they are, it's accepting that they'll never be who you hoped they would be. You stop not because you no longer love them, but because you finally love yourself more. And in that quiet, something new begins to bloom. trust, not in them, in you. You begin to believe that you can live without their validation, that you can be happy without winning a never-ending argument, that you can walk out of the manipulation not needing permission, not needing to explain, and most importantly, not needing to feel guilty. It's not when you love them, it's not when you forgive them. It's the moment you look them in the eye and no longer feel fear that shakes them to their core. A narcissist isn't shaken by your pain. They only begin to panic when they can no longer use it to control you. You were once the perfect supply. You believed in kindness. You wanted to heal. You believed in love's ability to overcome. And because of that, you were easy to control. But now, you're awake. You've stopped asking, why are they doing this, and started saying, whatever the reason, I'm not allowing this anymore. And they feel the shift. They sense it. Not through your words, but through the silent, calm, unwavering energy you now carry. A silence that isn't passive, a gaze that no longer begs, a posture that no longer waits for their permission to be okay. To a healthy person, this is when they would reflect, listen, maybe even change. But to a narcissist, this is the moment the real power struggle begins. When you see through them, you shatter the illusion they've spent their life building. The mask they wear, smart, kind, misunderstood, charming, loses its power over you. And that is something they cannot tolerate, because narcissists can't face the truth. They live in illusion to avoid confronting the emptiness inside. And if you see the truth, you become the mirror they most despise. They won't admit fault. They won't bow their heads. They won't change. Instead, they'll weaponize everything you once held dear. Every memory, every vulnerable story you once shared, every scar you trusted them with. They'll use it all against you. You expect an apology, but what comes first is gaslighting, not the soft kind they used in the beginning, but aggressive, jarring attacks. You're imagining things. I never said that. Are you insane? How could you think so badly of me? This is when they try to destroy your memory, making you doubt what you know you saw. They know you've already seen the truth, but they still try to rebuild the illusion, not because they believe it'll work, but because it's the only way they know how to survive. And when gaslighting fails, they switch tactics to guilt. They start crying. They talk about abandonment in childhood, betrayal in past relationships, how hurt they are because you don't believe in them. They'll say you're the only one who ever made them want to be better. But this time, you feel the disconnect. Something in their eyes doesn't move you anymore. You don't see someone wounded. You see an actor clinging to a performance that's falling apart. You realize the vulnerability they're showing isn't a plea for love. It's a tactic to pull you back to the place where you once felt responsible for saving them. But this time, you don't rush in to rescue. You stay still. You stay silent. And that's what drives them crazy. A narcissist cannot handle the silence of someone they can no longer control. They'll switch gears. From victim to attacker, they'll smear your name, call you toxic, ungrateful, heartless. They'll reach out to your friends, your family, spinning a distorted version of events just to damage your credibility, because in doing so they protect their image. Because when you see through them, they can no longer control the way you perceive them. And to their fragile ego, that is intolerable. So they do the only thing they know, rewrite the story, flip the roles, and paint you as the villain. And you must be ready, because this isn't a quiet ending. It's the violent reaction of someone losing the only thing that ever made them feel powerful, your reaction. When you no longer react, they no longer exist within you, and that is what sends them spiraling out of control. When gaslighting no longer works, and you're no longer moved by tears or emotional pleas, they escalate to the next level, role reversal. This is one of the most dangerous tactics because it doesn't target your logic, it targets your moral identity. They won't just tell you you're wrong, they'll tell you that you're the narcissist. They'll present subtle evidence, quoting things you said in anger, framing your healthy boundaries as controlling behavior. And because you're thoughtful and empathetic, you begin to question yourself, am I being cold? Am I just like them? The answer is no. Someone who stops to ask, am I the manipulator, is almost never the manipulator. Narcissists don't ask those questions. They don't self-reflect, they don't take accountability, and they certainly don't walk into therapy ready to own their faults. But you're hurting, you're questioning, you're trying to understand. That's not narcissism. That's the first step out of a toxic cycle. And they know it. So when role reversal fails, they pivot again. This time to restorative love. They'll come back, softer, sweeter than ever. They'll say they've had a breakthrough, that you were right, that they've started therapy, they're reading psychology books, they're working on change. Maybe they gift you a book about narcissism as a silent admission. Maybe they send you a long email full of regret and self-healing talk, thanking you for inspiring their transformation. Don't be fooled. This isn't healing. This is the same game with a new disguise. And this time the trap is lined with faux awareness, therapy speak, and the appearance of insight. But none of it is real. It's all wrapped in the right words, but driven by the same manipulation. If you go back, they won't become someone new. They'll resume the game, but now it's more subtle, more refined, because now they know you're smarter, more alert. They'll manipulate you with the very tools you just learned to protect yourself. They'll talk about inner children, triggers and boundaries, not to build a healthier relationship, but to justify the same old behavior. And if you don't go back, they'll go on the offensive. They'll start telling others you're the narcissist. They'll plant seeds of doubt, whisper rumors to people who once admired you. They'll rewrite the story, but this time the roles are reversed. You're the abuser, and they're just the overlover who got hurt. This is the reputation destruction phase, and you need to understand it's not about destroying you, it's about salvaging their own collapsing image. A narcissist cannot stand for the truth to be known, because truth is their ultimate enemy, and if they can't silence you, they'll try to ensure no one listens to you. At this point, the most important thing is not to react, not to defend your name, not to play their game. What matters most is standing firm in your powerful silence. You've already won, not because you hurt them, but because they can no longer shake you. You don't need to explain yourself to everyone. You don't need to prove anything. You just need to live in truth, and those with eyes to see will see. Finally, when every tactic fails, when you don't come back, when you don't react, when you don't cry, don't need closure, they'll play their last card. Disappear completely, not because they've let go, but because they've lost access to the emotional energy you once gave them. They'll ghost you, cut off contact, post on social media as if they're living their best life with someone new, but deep down they know they've lost, not because you beat them, but because you stopped playing. And for someone who survives on control, nothing is more devastating than being rendered powerless. True freedom doesn't come when the narcissist disappears. It comes the moment you stop reacting externally and internally. No more arguments, no more attempts to explain, no more hurting because they don't understand you, no more chasing validation from someone who was never truly listening. You pull away, not because you've given up, but because you finally realize there's nothing left to prove to someone who never intended to see you in the first place, and in that silence a new kind of strength begins to emerge. In your relationship with the narcissist, silence used to be a punishment. They used it to scare you, to make you submit, to make you feel invisible and unworthy. But now you reclaim silence for yourself as a clear declaration. I have nothing more to say, I know what's true, and I no longer need your confirmation. When you don't respond to the text, when you don't need closure, when you don't write a long letter explaining why you had to leave, that's not you being cold. That's you growing. You understand now that your energy is not meant to be wasted explaining something that someone never intended to understand. You're no longer living in a state of defense. No more waking up with anxiety over an unanswered message. No more guessing someone's mood just to regulate your behavior. You walk away not out of weakness, but because you've seen enough, endured enough, and finally love yourself enough to stop. Your withdrawal doesn't just change your surroundings, it changes you from within. You begin to hear your own true voice, feel the desires that had long been silenced, and, for the first time in a long time, you feel peace. No more chaos, no more roles to play, no more pretending to be the understanding one in a script built on manipulation, just you, and a new space where healing can finally happen. You used to search for your worth through someone else's eyes. You believed being loved was proof that you were enough. But in the awakening process, you begin to see the narcissist never truly loved you. They only used you as a mirror to reflect their own ego. And when you refused to be that mirror any longer, they withdrew their affection, their attention, their praise, the things you once mistook as evidence of love. But instead of falling apart, this time you stand firm, because you no longer base your value on external validation. You begin asking yourself, what brings meaning to me? Who am I when I'm not trying to please anyone? Which voice inside me most needs to be heard? And in that moment, you become the one who validates your own worth. Narcissists want your emotions: love, anger, jealousy, pain. Any reaction keeps you in the game, but when you stop reacting, you sever the emotional cord entirely. You're not the one chasing. You're not the one trying to end things respectfully. You don't need closure. You don't need a final talk. You don't need a mutual understanding. You choose silence. And that silence isn't empty. It's a declaration of power. You think they fear losing you. No, they fear losing their ability to affect your emotions. They don't know what to do when you're not angry, not crying. They can't control you if you're no longer triggered. And when all tactics fail, they descend into the one state they fear most: irrelevance. When you stop reacting, you become someone they can't define. You're no longer a character in their narrative. You've stepped out and begun writing your own script. When you stop reacting, it's not just about leaving. It's about reclaiming every part of yourself that was once twisted, every feeling that was denied. You begin to live honestly, without permission, without apology, without fear. And you'll see, though it feels empty at first, that space begins to fill with peace, with self-respect, and with the most precious thing of all, you, whole and true. You think they forgot you quickly. You see them smiling on social media, hand in hand with someone new, posting sweet philosophical quotes about love, healing, and forgiveness. But don't be fooled by the image. The truth is, narcissists don't move on. They don't get over you. They just bypass you, artificially and in haste. The truth is this: when you pulled away and stopped reacting, you left behind a void they can't fill with anyone else. Not because you were the greatest love of their life, but because you were the only world they ever fully controlled and lost. A narcissist doesn't have a true identity. They survive by borrowing the image, emotions, and reactions of others to feel alive. They don't have a self, only a shell maintained by admiration, attention, and emotional feedback. When you stop reacting, they lose their mirror. Nothing left to reflect, nothing left to manipulate, and that leaves a gaping emptiness inside them, one they're not emotionally mature enough to confront. At first, they pretend not to care, but deep down they're drowning in invisibility. For them, nothing is more terrifying than becoming invisible in the eyes of someone whose emotions they once controlled completely. Your silence doesn't just strip away their power, it makes them question their very ability to manipulate. And for a narcissist, that's unbearable. They begin to spiral. Why isn't she reacting? Is she plotting something? Or has she really stopped feeling anything for me? And that's when something they've buried their whole life begins to resurface: their primal insecurity. The feeling of abandonment, the ache of not being seen, the sense of worthlessness when they can't control someone else. They'll never admit it, but inside the panic has already begun. To avoid facing the truth that they've truly lost you, they do what they always do: run. And they run by replacing. They'll find a new source of supply, someone naive, trusting, emotionally available, and they'll run the exact same playbook they used with you. Idealize, control, devalue, discard. They hope the cycle will fill the void you left behind. But there's a problem this time. The victory no longer feels the same, because even if they can manipulate someone new, they know you saw through them, and that ruins the illusion of their omnipotence. They may win the next round, but they've lost the deeper game. They've been exposed, and they can't undo it. Narcissists live by controlling the narrative. They distort the past, manipulate the present, and paint the future, so long as everything keeps them at the center. But when you wake up and stand firm, you destroy their ability to rewrite history. You didn't just leave, you took the truth with you. And no matter how many versions they tell others, they know there's someone out there, someone who once loved them deeply, who no longer believes in them. That's something they can't erase, and it becomes a silent obsession. As you begin living authentically, healing, stepping into a new life, peaceful, strong, drama-free, the narcissist feels it, even if they never say it, and they envy it. Not because they want you back, but because they don't understand how you healed without them. In their mind, you were supposed to collapse, to beg, to break. But now, you're quiet, free and shining, and that destroys their illusion of power. They once believed you couldn't live without them. Now they realize it's they who can't feel in control when you're no longer within reach. Narcissists don't change, but they remember. They don't let go, they don't accept defeat, and if there's one thing they never forget, it's the person who took their power away. They might not call, they might not text, they might never mention your name again, but they're watching, still lurking, still trying to keep you in their orbit, through mutual friends, social media, veiled comments, and if one day you let your guard down, they might try to come back, not out of love, but to test whether they still have control. But this time, you're different. You're no longer the one who needs validation, no longer the one who can be swayed by sweet promises. You're no longer part of the reaction cycle. You don't need revenge. You don't need closure. You just keep living in alignment with the truth you now see, and refuse to be manipulated ever again. And that, more than any confrontation, any words, any proof, is their final, permanent defeat. You didn't walk away from that relationship triumphant and smiling. You left like a soul completely drained. No one saw you collapse in the bathroom. No one heard your midnight sighs. No one understood how just one cold, detached look from them could make you feel utterly worthless. But you survived, and that is no small thing. You survived the invalidation, the mind games, the empty promises, the silent punishments. You made it through nights of waiting for a message that never came, mornings waking up with the weight of guilt without knowing what you even did wrong. You survived a psychological war that no one but you truly understands, and when you walked away, shattered, hollow, that was the beginning of your rebirth. Leaving a narcissist isn't like leaving a former lover. It's stepping out of a system of total control that had rewired how you think, feel, react, and exist. You didn't just lose them, you lost the version of yourself that only existed in their eyes. And in the early days, that loss feels like a gaping hole. You may begin to doubt yourself. You may wonder if anyone will ever love you in a healthy way. You may feel like a war-torn landscape. Nothing left, no one around, nowhere safe to land. But that is your foundation, not to rebuild what was, but to create what has never been built before, your original self. Even after you've left, the emotional programming remains. You might catch yourself over-apologizing. You might feel guilty for setting boundaries. You might think you're being selfish for simply honoring your own needs. That's because their voice, full of judgment and manipulation, still echoes inside you. And now you have to learn to separate their voice from your own. You begin to ask, is this what I really think? Or is this what I was conditioned to think? Bit by bit, you discern the difference. You learn to stop apologizing for your existence. You learn to say no without justification. You learn to stand firm, no explanations, no defense, because you know you are allowed to take up space. People like to say, you'll go back to being yourself. But the truth is, you'll never be that old version again. The one who was naive, who forgave too easily, who kept believing in the good, even after being hurt again and again. That version of you is gone, but not in a tragic way, in a powerful way. Now you are strong, not because you stopped hurting, but because you no longer let the pain define you. You understand that love does not come with control. You know that silence is not always maturity, sometimes it's manipulation. You no longer confuse intensity with health. You no longer call chaos passion. You've redefined love, and in that definition you do not lose yourself. You once saw your worth through their eyes. When they praised you, you felt lovable. When they criticized you, you felt broken. When they showed care, you felt worthy. When they withdrew, you felt invisible. Not anymore. You start rediscovering old hobbies, not to impress, but because you genuinely enjoy them. You reconnect with your body through restful sleep, nourishing meals, and moments of stillness that aren't invaded. You let yourself laugh, cry, sit in silence, without needing an audience to feel valid. And for the first time in a very long time, you feel enough, simply because you exist, and you no longer need permission to do so. You're no longer searching for someone to heal you. You don't need a relationship to prove you're lovable. You don't need closure. You don't need to explain. You don't need a perfect, tidy ending, because now you're no longer chasing a happy ending. You're living a new chapter, and you are the one writing it. You understand that a relationship isn't a place where you must sacrifice to be loved. It's a space where both people grow, not through control, but through freedom, not through fear of loss, but through trust that neither of you must lose yourselves to stay. You were once broken, but now you are reborn, not from the ruins of what was, but from the fire you lit in the darkness, when no one was there, when nothing was left but you. And from that flame you've become the truest version of yourself, strong, deep, and free. If you've made it to this moment, chances are you too have walked through the darkness created by a narcissist. You once believed that if you were just good enough, kind enough, patient enough, they would change. You thought love could fix everything, and then you realized love cannot save someone who doesn't want to be saved. You didn't fail. You woke up. You stared the truth in the face, not with cold logic, but with a heart that had bled. You walked away, not because you stopped loving them, but because you finally started loving yourself more, and you owe no one an apology for that. When you stopped reacting, they lost control. When you withdrew, they unraveled. When you were reborn, they were left behind, in the very emptiness they created, and though they may never admit it, you are the one person they can never regain control over again, and that is your victory. No revenge needed, no clapbacks, no recognition from anyone else, just you still standing, whole, honest, and free. They once defined you by your weakness. Now you redefine yourself by your strength. They once silenced you through fear. Now you choose silence because there is nothing left to prove. They were once the center of your world. Now you are the center of your own. And if you are in the middle of your rebirth right now, remember this. You are not alone. There are millions of people across this planet who once loved, were manipulated, lost themselves, and then rose, stood tall, and built a life more powerful than ever before. You don't need to wait for someone to save you. You are the salvation you were waiting for. Thank you for watching this video all the way through. If it brought clarity, if it touched something deep within you, share it. Not just to empower someone else, but to affirm one thing to yourself. You are awake. Don't forget to subscribe if you want to continue this journey with me, because there is still so much for us to uncover, to heal, and to rise from. All the places where people once thought we'd never get back up. You are not broken. You are rising, and this time, you're never looking back.